Welcome back to the Business of Becoming. I am your host, Stephanie. And if you're new here, I help high-achieving people who feel alone at the top find peace, purpose, and the next version of themselves. So if you've been here, you've known that we've talked about confidence, and we're on a confidence streak. We've been talking heavily about, what you say to yourself before you walk into a business meeting, how you carry yourself, the way you walk, the whole nine. We've been talking heavily on just showing up and really just owning a room, right? Today, we're going to talk about the opposite. We're going to talk about what happens and what do you say to yourself really when there's nobody to perform for. We're really going to talk about this, that quiet confidence that we've talked about from before, but really something that I genuinely hated for most of my life, which is solitude and the power of solitude, which it genuinely is something so amazing to master and to at least just have some sense of control of that solitude in your life. Like, I know many of you probably know somebody who can go and take themselves out for coffee and, can go to dinner by themselves. That was the worst thing in the world for me. That was literally like, have me swallow knives instead, because being alone was something that I just always thought, and society really teaches us that being alone is kind of just a negative thing. It's something that like nobody wants to be with you or nobody wanted to go to dinner with you. And there's this negative like connotation with being alone. And I, as I've grown up and as I've gone through all of these seasons and all of these phases of my life, I've come to realize the importance of that solitude and the importance of protecting it. And what do I do with it and how not to avoid it, but to actually sit in it and process my day, my thoughts, my dreams, my goals on my own without vocalizing it to anyone but to myself. And how it's really changed my life. So if you've never done any of these things, if you've never been alone, if you've never been able to drive without music or without something distracting you like a podcast, maybe this one, today I really want to encourage you on these little things that have helped me really master that power of solitude and really hone into this version of myself that I enjoy. And if I enjoy it, then not only am I going to just ooze out confidence and everyone around me is going to feel it and people are going to enjoy my company as well, my leadership, my team, but even in your relationships, like I know so many women and men, but more women, that they can't be alone. I've never seen them single, ever. And maybe you find yourself in that position, or maybe you know somebody in that position. And now you can kind of find out, well, maybe they just can't really own that solitude, or maybe they're just afraid to confront some things, which we're going to talk about today. So stick with me. So we're going to go in today to talk about really the room before the room you are supposed to walk into. Because last week we talked about, the rooms that you're supposed to walk into and how to build for that, how to prepare for that, and how to perform really for those kinds of situations and those kinds of meetings. And owning a room is something that you do. It's the skills that you have to have. It's the mantra that you have to tell yourself beforehand. It's all of these things that prepare you to now show up, right? But we're going to talk about the room before that room, the one that exists before there was anybody to fill the room. And that, my friends, is identity. And I know we've talked about confidence, we've talked about identity a bunch of times, but it's going to loop in because we're in a season of becoming. And you're on this episode because you want to be a better version of yourself. And in order to do that, you got to know yourself and who you are in this moment, what your identity is, what it carries. Your identity, in reality, is what makes this whole performance sustainable. It's what makes you being able to walk into all these rooms actually be fruitful and be successful. If you don't have that, then these rooms are going to be the ones that make you, and they're going to be the ones that break you, which we're not about that business. We're about being who we are in this room and in any other room in our lives that we get to walk into and have the privilege to actually just share with the world who we are and what we do. I talked a little bit about, this episode that went pretty much viral online, which was, standing alone. And I talked a lot about how I was grieving. And I talked a lot about how I had to sit back and actually learn to process the things that I was outgrowing. Who I was becoming. I had a lot of stuff I had to outgrow to be that person. And in reality, those are, moments that we're grieving and we don't really know. Our nervous system isn't really loud enough to vocalize that we're grieving these things. There was no mantra. There's nothing, honestly, that works better than solitude and you sitting with it to really tell you who you are right now. It was who I was finding myself to be when nobody was around and when nobody was telling me all of these wonderful things. It was just me. It was me with myself and with who I was, and just building that foundation from really kind of ground zero, like rock bottom. And we've been told that like confidence is something that you are built, either you're built with it or that it comes with, these moments that you empower yourself and you tell yourself all these great amount of things, which is awesome. And I do believe that some confidence really does come from the way you speak to yourself, right? But confidence is truly, and I'm telling you y'all from experience, like my confidence truly was completely redefined and built in these quiet, almost sad moments where nobody had an influence or an opinion on my life. And it was the best way that I can say that I built confidence alone was realizing while I was sitting alone, whether I was in my car, whether I was driving around because I didn't want to be home, it was realizing what I was able to survive in these quiet moments, what I was able to survive during all this time, coming to terms with, wow, I really did that. I really am growing from that. Like, I really have to let that go. And those are all conversations that I was having internally. And honestly, making those decisions alone gave me the confidence to show up and just not give a damn what anybody thought was best for me, but what I knew was best for me. Because I sat, talked to myself, and I made those decisions because they were what was best for me, right? And maybe you are in that season of your life, and maybe you are, going through these things where you're outgrowing things and you're letting everybody else have an opinion on what you should do, or if you should stay in the same position, or if you should keep the things that you're outgrowing, and just having so many damn opinions in your life that they leave you confused and just dumbfounded. And then again goes your identity, where you're just kind of like in this, I don't know, and you're not having these real one-on-one conversations with yourself. And there's research that shows that people who can be in solitude and enjoy themselves in solitude and just genuinely like be okay, be happy in their solitude, tend to be people who are actually much steadier in life. People who have that real confidence and just this steady like consistency, which if you know me by now, you know how important consistency is and showing up is. And you also know how important not being irrational and making, good decisions, not just emotional decisions, how important that is to our lives, how important that is to business, how important that is to being a parent, to being a leader. It's almost everything. It's such a big part of our role as individuals. And there's a difference, because, it can get lonely being in solitude. It can get almost sad. I'll be honest. There was moments But there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. One is a feeling, being lonely, aching, sad, the whole nine. And the other is a practice. Solitude is a decision that you make. And it's a decision that not many people often make. But they should. Because what better way to know yourself than to talk to yourself? And I'm going to bring this all full circle and just share the genuineness part of me. So there was a season of my life where everybody was like, wow, you're so strong. And oh my God, you're overcome so much. And they would see, the conferences, they would see me doing public speaking gigs. They would see me running a company. They'd see me being a parent. I mean, they saw me just like running. And not that it didn't mean anything to me, because, it was kind, and I would say thank you. But it didn't help me know who I was, because, yeah, everybody saw all of that, but they didn't see the times where I was driving in my car, not wanting to come home, trying to fill every bit of quiet time with noise, whether it was calling somebody or it was, trying to find out what anybody else was doing, if they wanted to go to dinner, if I can just swing by, they didn't see that. Not one person did. And again, it wasn't because I was, it wasn't because I was just only depressed, because I probably was, to be honest with you. But the truth was, I was just so much more afraid to meet myself in this season. I was afraid to meet who I was becoming. So I was filling it up with anything and everything. I was filling it up with work, with, being involved with my kids in their school, and even more so like doing outdoor projects. And it was just like there was not one moment for me to sit with myself and say, okay, Steph, you're going through this. Who are you becoming from it? Yeah, I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was more afraid of just meeting myself again and looking at her in the mirror and saying, okay, this is who you are. And so many of us are running from meeting ourselves in this season because either one, we think that we're too far or too behind, or we should have done this, or this should have never happened to us. And those are all valid points. Those are all things that you should have a conversation with yourself, and you should talk about it in therapy. But you shouldn't be afraid to talk and hear these things and be in silence and be in solitude, because you need to meet yourself again here. Same person who you were 5 years ago. That person, that you were 5 years ago is not at all the same person that you are today. Just like in the next 5 years, it's going to be a completely version of yourself. It's a completely new version of yourself. It's going to be somebody that you're going to have to, again, reintroduce yourself to, because you're going to have new goals, new visions, new things that are important, and new things that are priorities in your life. So I hope that landed, because I know it definitely did for me. When I realized, oh crap, I'm running away from myself, and kind of gave me a big reality check that really helped set the rest of my life in motion for the better. So let's talk about the practical. Let's talk about the practical things you can do. And there's always eat, pray, love. There's always, go find yourself in a foreign country. There's always go on this wondrous, crazy retreat. There's all these things you can do. But if you want to be practical and you look at your life and you look at your routine and that kind of seems impossible right now, there's one simple thing that I've done and has helped tremendously, help me land as to what I'm doing and where I am right now. And it's this 10-minute just decompression time. This 10-minute moment that creates this kind of self-improvement habit. And it just, sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes it's at night when I put the kids to sleep. But most of the time, I'll be honest with you, it's right when I'm in the shower. I don't have anything on, I don't have a show, and that's really difficult for me, guys, I want to tell you, because I don't get to watch TV as much as I want to. So a lot of the times when I'm just completely alone with no kids and no work, the TV in my bathroom and in my shower is the only time I get to catch up. So it's a struggle. But we're here to self-improve, to become better versions of ourselves. And something that I've done has been this 10-minute break where I have zero distractions, and I just start recounting my day. I start recounting conversations that I've had. I start, kind of going through, okay, what did I do today? Where am I going this week? What's it look like? I just start talking to myself. And I might sound kind of like cuckoo, but I start going through these things. I start talking to myself. How did that make me feel? What did I think about that? You know, actually having these conversations that I blow past them during the day because I don't have time. So things happen and I just don't have time to process them or to give them the attention that maybe they do deserve, that maybe my emotions deserve to kind of understand. And it's kind of like this solitude audit that I've done. I've done it so much, and I want to be super honest. Actually, not too long ago, I was doing one of these solitude audits and just kind of going through my time. And a friend of mine, I went out to dinner with her, and we were talking, so forth and so forth. And the next day, I had told her, hey, I left this in your car, like, this and that. I definitely, I need to go pick it up. It was my bag. And she's like, no, don't worry about it. Like, I'll bring it over to you. And I was like, no, like, the first thing in my mind was, how can I give her something back for coming to do me this favor? And it was like, I'll buy you lunch, or I'll get you dinner or whatever. And she checked me and told me, like, no, this is not transactional. Like, I'm just your friend. And I blew past that. Like, it was just like, ah, yeah, whatever. Okay, fine, cool. Like, thank you. And when I had one of my solitude moments and auditing myself, I was like, whoa, how many of my relationships have I treated transactional? How many times did I put myself in that position, or maybe felt or maybe I made someone feel that way, that my friendship or my relationship or whatever was, romantically or not, was transactional. And it really made me start auditing myself. And I was like mind blown because I've never thought of that. No one's ever told me that, but I've also never given myself the chance to really start auditing every relationship and seeing if that's one thing I was carrying and I was bringing to the table unconsciously, because I was so used to it. And I think, that's just an example. I would love to hear from you guys, these things, that if you actually take the time to recount certain conversations and take away some of the noise and just listen to yourself. Like, what ways are you now trying to become better because of these conversations that you're talking to yourself about? Or these things that you're experiencing that you don't give the time to, that are actually like, warning signs or hazards or just things trying to make you better, and people talking to you, and you're just completely missing the freaking point because you're filling it with noise because you don't want to have these conversations with yourself. And it feels freaking weird. It feels super weird talking to yourself or just sitting in silence, because sometimes I'm just picturing myself. I'm probably just like registering all of this stuff that's happening. But I kid you not, in those moments that you're alone and doing this legwork, this mental and emotional legwork, those are moments where the noise starts being filled with ideas. They start being filled with, maybe a new perspective. They start being filled with even prayers, because now that you're checking yourself, you can say, man, God, like, that was me, right? I was like, man, God, am I really somebody that's been, so used to having these transactional relationships? Like, I don't want to give that out, and I don't want to be like that. How can I change that? Like, this is that time with all these creativities and all of the stuff that is in you is finally given the chance to shine, and finally given the chance to just go to the top and go to the surface level and just really be seen. The next thing is, feeling alone, being in a room filled with people. We've all been there, especially if you're in a season of growing and changing, and things are just so different. You can feel so lonely. And I have, time and time again, have said yes to do things that I would never, or I did not want to at all, but it was because I just didn't want to be alone. And I mean, I have spoken to hundreds of people at conferences, and I've done, gigs, and I've done all these different things. And I've walked off that stage, and many people were like, oh my God, wow, it was amazing. I've walked off the stage and I felt completely lonely in a room filled with hundreds of people, completely by myself, completely just done for, you know? And I would go to the grocery store. I'm telling you guys, I would do everything to just be around people because I thought maybe that wouldn't make me feel lonely, or I thought maybe that would make me, avoid this solitude and avoid the feeling of like, oh, if I'm by myself, then that means I'm going backwards. I'm not going forward, which is complete BS. Being by myself has taught me that forget having to just go to the grocery store because, I just didn't want to be alone. But now it's like I'm going because I can actually have a moment to just think. Even if I'm doing grocery shopping or whatever, like I'm using these opportunities to just talk to myself, to audit myself, and really feel whole again. And prove to myself that I could exist fully without any backup, without anybody having to narrate my life or tell me or feel the loneliness, and this goes for every facet in your life, people. I mean, in relationships and in business, like you got to create that steadiness in you. And there's a paradox. Like I said, you could be in a room filled with a million people and still feel like you're by yourself. So there's times, especially like that, that's a red flag. You got to audit yourself. You got to spend that time alone. Got to do the work. That's solitude benefits. It's showing up in the most unglamorous ways. And it's choosing those moments of solitude to just be alone, to talk to yourself, to find that inner steadiness. When you do that, you're choosing yourself. And not only are you choosing yourself, but you're practicing self-trust. And ask yourself that question. Like right now, when's the last time you trusted your decision wholeheartedly without asking anybody for their opinion? Like when's the last time you fully trusted yourself with no freaking question asked? Why? Because you've let your life be filled with so much noise that you don't have much trust in yourself. So practicing these moments of solitude and choosing them, choosing to be in it, choosing to do the work, you're practicing that self-trust and you're building that all over again. It's like a muscle. It's like going to work out. You don't go and, get a 50-pound weight and start trying to do curls, especially not me. You start small and then you build your way up there. And it's the same thing. You start small in trusting yourself in silence and trusting yourself in the quiet moments and trusting the way you talk to yourself and listening and auditing and hearing your nervous system, because the more you start building that little by little, the louder that's going to be than the noise outside. So, when they say that intuition and that gut feeling, guess what? That's real. That's you. That's your inner self trying to friggin' tell you something. But if you're filling up your whole life with noise and everyone else's opinion, you're never going to trust yourself. You're never going to build to that point where you can hear your gut or you can feel it and know what's the right decision for yourself. You can't. And that's self-development talking. So learn to read those signals, and I would love for you guys to be people who are very in tune with yourselves and very in tune with who you are alone. It's something I've been practicing. It's something that has been tough, because I've done it before in the past, but then now with the things that I've gone through recently, even like it's been rough. I run away from them still, and I'm talking to you because I've realized so much more how I've tried to fill the noise again. And it's a habit, it's a bad habit that I've had. And guys, I've been doing it lately. I've been, trying to find my solitude again. And my God, do I feel so much better than what I did even a few weeks ago. Because I've been listening to me and knowing the decisions I'm making, they're for me. I don't need anybody else to tell me. anything. And I'm trusting myself again. So I would love for you guys to do the same. So start small. Speak to yourself, whether it's in the shower, whether it's in the car, on your way to work, on the way to pick up the kids. And then take it a little step further. Go have a coffee. Take yourself out for coffee. And if you're single, you never know. You might have this little hallmark moment. Maybe somebody else is there, and maybe they are super, super confident. And maybe they're also in tune with themselves, and that's pretty great. They're not avoidance. But whatever. Another episode. But take yourself out for coffee. And then later, take yourself out to dinner. And just try to see if you enjoy being with you. Try to see that. Try to see if you can even enjoy being with you. Which, again, all brings me to something that I've already talked about, but it's just how solitude really helps with decision making. It brings clarity to your life. It brings this sense of confidence in knowing, okay, I have run through this myself, and I'm ready to make this decision, and this is the way that I'm going to take this, or this is the way I'm going to take the company, and this is the way I'm going to open up this new office, or this is the way I'm going to run this new system. A lot of the decisions that I've made in my company and in my personal life, and that I've seen success in, has been not in the meeting, boardrooms, have not been in, big, round table talks. A lot of the decisions I've made have been completely alone. Have been when I've sat down and been like, can I really do this right now? Can I really separate the time to be this, diligent with this? Can I make this successful? This podcast, the idea was brought up. I thought of it. Cool. We went back and forth. I went back home completely by myself and started auditing everything and saying, can I really do this? Having this internal conversation. And I made the decision. I made the decision to do it. With nobody else's just opinion. But support, yes, is one thing. Opinions are completely different. And that's why solitude is important, because then you can distinguish the two. You can distinguish someone being supportive and someone just having a damn opinion. And it could sound supportive, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes it might be like, oh my God, that's so great, but are you sure you can really do that? Like, opinion, burp, blocked. Like, you don't need that. You don't. But those decisions and those things that say, yes, I'm going to do this, usually tend to happen when you're alone. And they should happen when you're alone. They shouldn't be only happening in boardrooms and in meeting rooms, because if it's a decision for your life and the way that you're going to take this route, you got to be okay with it, because you're the one that's going to have to stick it out. As a parent and as a business owner and as someone who is single trying to figure their life out, give yourself the chance to hear your inner voice, to hear what your nervous system is saying right now. A lot of you might already have the answer to the big question, to the big decision. You might already have the answer to that question. You just needed time to actually sit with yourself and come in agreement with yourself and say, okay, this is the route that I'm going to take. So before a big call, before a big meeting, before the big, pitch at the boardroom, give yourself a couple minutes. Sit with it and find peace with yourself. Because then you're going to find that confidence to say, we're going to go this way. And that's what every team wants, a leader like that. Every team wants a leader that they can say, are we going this route? Oh, okay. Not, oh, boss, I think we should do this and that, and then just have you just munch over all of these different opinions and then just sit there and say, okay, we'll go with this one because, he was the most passionate, or this one kind of makes the most sense right now. No, everybody, and I'm telling you because I've followed people for a big part of my life. Everybody wants a leader that they can sit with themselves and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And forget about whose opinion and whose thought it was. They processed that themselves. They regurgitated it and said, this is what we're doing. No questions asked. I don't give a damn. That's what we look for. That's That's who I want to be. I want to be someone that I can sit with this. And whether I make the right decision or the wrong decision, sometimes it's your gut. You feel it because you're so in tune with yourself. You just, you know it. Call that conviction, call that spirituality, call it whatever it is. But big decisions I've made in my life have come from that. The decision to take over, to take over this company, the decision to, be a mom, that all of these things, like, they came from my gut. And I knew at that moment that was what I needed to do. And everybody followed that needed to follow. The next thing I want to talk about is solitude training. The next thing I want to talk about is solitude as a boundary. Solitude as a boundary, I guess, training, we can call it. Because I genuinely believe that solitude and boundaries are tied together, because either you're filling the noise or someone else is trying to fill, the void in your life and just make it noisier than what it should be, or they're peer pressuring you to do something that you just don't care to do, and you're just going to say yes because you don't want to be alone, and this is probably what you should do. So this is where your boundaries start getting blurred, and again, you start dismissing yourself and the things that are important to you because you're just trying to fill it with what is important for everybody else. And, well, yeah, you shouldn't be alone, so it makes sense, right? And it's like people who have already survived their own company and the success of their company. They don't need to say yes to everything now because they've survived it. They know what it's cost, to get to the point where they are here and they're successful. They don't need validation from anything or anybody else because they've built that in the quiet. They've built that in the long suffering. So sometimes some of us are in that place where we're, entrepreneurs, and we're just saying yes to everything and every opportunity because there's just no boundaries. We're just trying to get exposure and we're just trying to get out there, and not everything needs a yes. And if you sat with yourself and were a little bit more quiet, you would see being out there and exposure is not everything. It's really not. It's draining, and it will drain your people. And it will drain the people who are you're trying to lead and trying to get out there with. And then you teach your people at the same time that they can't say no. And then you're just going to have people who are not going to help set the right foundation for your company, are not going to help set the right foundation for what the culture you're trying to build. And if you find yourself being afraid to even say no to something that you feel like you shouldn't even be a part of anyways, then that's a reality check for you. That's a little red flag where you should say, oh, I should check my boundaries. Because I shouldn't be afraid to say no to something that I don't want to participate in, or I don't want my company involved in, or I don't want my people involved in, or I don't want my kid going to, or I don't want to go to, period. There should be no fear in that. And brother, in dating, don't confuse presence with peace. Don't. Being in the quiet taught me the difference between the two. Because sometimes we fill that with a partner, we fill that with, situationship or something. We fill that void with what we should be filling ourselves with at that moment, which is just shutting the hell up and listening to our intuition and saying, is this what I need to be doing right now? Or is this right for me? Or is this really what I want? Is this where my standards are? Are these where my boundaries are? And you convince yourself and you play yourself to confuse someone's presence with peace. And that's not at all the truth. That's not at all great for you. Because someone's presence is great, but that shouldn't be your peace. Peace should come from you. Peace should come from the stillness, the steadiness that you've worked your ass off to practice and perfect in solitude. That stillness, that peace comes from you, not by anybody else's presence. And I'm telling you, I even say this with my kids. I love my kids. Heidi and Bear, they're the duo that honestly I didn't know how badly I needed in my life. But even their presence is not my peace. It's part of it. Sometimes it can be, but a lot of times it could be chaotic. But my peace comes from me, and I build that for myself so that I can provide that for them. So when they see mommy and they see, mom come pick them up, or, mommy putting them to bed, that peace I can give to them because I've built it for myself. And now I can create that for them. And there's that safe place for them. And that's what you should be doing for your partner. That's what you should be doing for your team, for relationships, for friendships. That's what you should be doing. You should be inviting people into that. And again, this is a sacred place, right? Because you've built this in solitude, but inviting those that are close into that, not letting people be that for you. If that makes any sense at all. I hope it does. I'm going to leave you guys with this because I think if you have gotten through this whole entire episode, this is probably my favorite part. It's the whole point of this episode. My life has been in a chapter that I never wanted to write. But the good part is that chapters end. And you can create the narrative for what your next chapter is going to look like. What's it going to be like? And who are you going to be in that? Through everything that you've been through. Are you going to carry that into this season, into this version of yourself? Or are you going to do the hard work in solitude and say, I'm going to talk to myself. I'm going to find out who I really am and what I really want to become and what really makes me happy. And I'm going to fight for that version. And I'm going to listen to her or to him and be the best freaking version of myself that I can possibly be. If this message landed with you, I really do encourage you to share it with a friend, share it with somebody who you think has been carrying a lot quietly, and let's push each other to really become the best versions of ourselves. And that all starts really with us creating our own inner peace and our own steadiness. So thank you guys for letting me chat with y'all, and I can't wait to see you guys next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe before Frankie gets on y'all.